Do I have to do this? Alright, let's get this out of the way. The 2018 Premier League season has come to a conclusion, with Manchester City being crowned as champions and becoming the first ever team to stack 100 points up in a Premier League season. Before the start of this Premier League season, I predicted the entire Premier League table in full, and today I will be going back and reacting to my Premier League predictions. Let's begin now with the bottom three, the relegation teams, and in 20th place I had... Alright, let's do this. I had Burnley. And by golly, did I not get reminded of it every single fucking day with people commenting on that video taking the piss out of me for putting Burnley in 20th. Oh, I'm sorry for not putting Burnley in 7th place. I mean, it was obvious they were going to finish in the top 10. Or at least obvious to everyone commenting anyway. I bet all those people knew that Leicester were going to win the Premier League title that fucking season as well. Look, I've got to be honest, okay? It's an L. It's a big fat L. I've got to take this L. I've got to. So I would like to take this opportunity to apologise to absolutely nobody. I'm not going to fucking apologise for putting Burnley in a relegation spot or for not putting them 7th. Do you have any idea what situation they were in at the beginning of the season? I know we've all got short memories as fucking football fans, but let me remind you, Burnley had not brought almost anyone into the team. They had so many outs on their season prior, which, by the way, only just barely survived relegation in their last season. They lost Andre Gray, George Boyd. I think they lost Michael Keane, who was great for them. Sure, maybe not so good for Everton this season, or at least it's debatable, but they were some big outs and barely brought anyone in to replace them. The only reason that Burnley have finished in such a high position is because Sean Dyche has got that team so well drilled and so structured that really they just could go out there and just see out a result against nearly any single side. And their defense is by far the best in, or one of the best in the Premier League. I think they've got the best defensive record out of any Premier League team outside of the top 6. Hell, I think they've even got a better defensive record than Arsenal do, although that's not too hard. They had quite a fair few players pop up and really have some massive seasons. Guys that no one's really ever heard of before, like Tarkowski, and then of course Nick Pope, who filled in for the injured Tom Heaton. I mean, come on. They just had so much go their way. I've got to give it up to Burnley. Fair credit to you boys. I've got nothing against you. I just put you in 20th because I genuinely thought you were going down. Maybe 20th was a bit harsh. That's the best that you'll get out of me, but let's just move on. Let's just get out. Let's just move it. I didn't, like, this never happened. In 19th place, I had Huddersfield. Now, out of all the recently promoted teams, Huddersfield were definitely the ones that we were most likely to see go back down. But to be fair, Huddersfield survived, I think, off the back of a brilliant start. I remember the beginning of their Premier League season, they had a really, really good run. They got a couple of very good results, like wins against Newcastle, a win against Manchester United. I remember it vividly. Aaron Moy scoring that first goal, which was absolute scenes. And yeah, they just had a really good start, and I think that is what really pushed them to survive this season. If it wasn't for that good start, they almost definitely would have gone back down again. And they brought in some names that weren't really too well known, but were firing for them, like I think Depotre, Mounier. So in the end, they just did enough to survive next season. We'll see how they go next season. And in 18th place, the last relegated team was Brighton. Yep, 0-3 from relegated teams this season, which sucks. But unfortunately, I just got them wrong. They ended up finishing in 15th. And again, Chris Hughton is just, I don't even want to say he's underrated at this point, because it feels like anytime anyone talks about Chris Hughton, they're always praising him. He's a seriously, seriously good manager who's just been in charge of a lot of maybe lower league teams or lower table teams. Like, for example, like Newcastle back in the day, some other clubs as well. Now he's taking control of Brighton, and he's really been doing a good job for them. And they brought in some great players as well. Matt Ryan is one of the best goalkeepers in the league. Not top 3, top 5, but a great goalkeeper for them. They had a very solid defense, especially a centre-back partnership. Shane Duffy was great this season, and Lewis Dunk as well, when he's not scoring own goals, is actually quite decent. Pascal Gross and Glenn Murray as well. I don't know how old he is, but he's still hitting the back of the net. Got double-digit goals this season. Now moving on to the rest of the bottom 10, and in 17th place, I had Swansea. So close to getting just one relegated team right. To be fair, if you go back and watch my Premier League reaction or my Premier League prediction video that I'm reacting to right now, I did say that a lot of Swansea's survival depended on whether or not they kept Sigurdsson, and they did eventually sell him on to Everton. He didn't have as good a season for Everton, but still the fact that he left Swansea was a massive loss for them. And in the end, it definitely helped in, or should I say, it definitely hindered them in surviving in the Premier League this season. They just were looking dire under Paul Clement. Carlos Carvalhal came in and they were really going quite well when he took over the reins, and Then they just had a massive drop in form, I think around about March, or with plenty of Premier League games left to go, and it all fell apart. I was watching that Southampton versus Swansea game, and that must just be heartbreaking for Swansea fans, especially for it to happen in your own stadium. But yeah, they'd been toying, and they'd been coming pretty close in previous seasons and just managing to survive, but no more. Swansea going down and just getting their position wrong by one. How brutal. In 16th position is Crystal Palace. Now, at the beginning of the Premier League season, I was worried that I'd put them too high, but no, now they've ended up finishing in 11th, and I'm going to be honest, it was really looking bad for them at the beginning of the season. They lost like their first 4 games in a row. They sacked Frank de Boer after just 4 games. It's got to be a record for the quickest Premier League sacking of all time, or I don't know, but I swear, they just were looking dire. And then they went and appointed Roy Hodgson, and at that point, every Premier League fan around the world just went, oh, for crying out loud, what are they doing? Do they want to get relegated? But no, we've got to be honest. We have to apologise. Every football fan in existence, at least the very few that actually rate Roy Hodgson, we got to apologise. Roy's got it done. Like, he's absolutely done bits with that team, kept them up, and they were actually looking really, really strong toward the end of this season. Wilfried Zaha is a fantastic player, and no offence, Crystal Palace fans, but clearly way too good for that team. I don't know where he's going to go, but he is surely going to get poached either in this transfer window or in the next, and some other good players popping up for them, like Luka Milivojevic putting away the 50-odd penalties that they seem to have got this season. Honestly, mental stuff. But no, credit Crystal Palace. It was looking really bad for you at the start, but you pulled it together. In 15th place is Watford, and again, just off by 1. They finish in 14th, so I'm still without a correct team in the correct spot as of yet, but eventually, surely it'll happen. Again, Watford, really strong start to their season. They were looking pretty good early on. Of course, Marco Silva, who had gotten the job after he left Hull City, after he did a relatively good job trying to keep them up, definitely did quite well with that Hull City team, but eventually it was just not really enough. But he showed that he could be a pretty good manager. But after their good start, Watford, and after guys like Richarlison were looking like 30 million, 40 million pound players, he's dropped off the face of the earth. And guys like Decore, who really had standout seasons, it really didn't end up too well for them, didn't they? I mean, they were really quite shocking toward the end of the season, or at least even almost before the midway point, their form started to drop and they never really recovered. They were quite average for the majority of the season. They were never in any danger of going down or anything, but if they keep playing like that next season, then I genuinely think they will be. But we'll see how they go. Obviously, I think a bit of a lackluster season for them, but they survived, so I guess it's fair play. In 14th position, Newcastle United. Now, I thought that was almost a bit of a bias pick at the beginning of the season looking back, because I genuinely was worried that we might go straight back down with the squad that we had. We didn't really invest that well at the beginning of the season, and I didn't know. I was genuinely nervous, and I thought 14th was surely way too high. But no, we've somehow managed to finish in the top 10. I have no idea how we've ended up finishing 10th. It seems impossible. I've been following the team all season long, and it just doesn't feel like we should be in 10th, but yet we are. I know it's all very close in that part of the table, and that we only got it done on goal difference, and there's only a matter of points away from us 10th place and like 14th, 15th, but it still seems mental. And what's even more crazy is that Rafa Benitez has been able to do it with the group of players that he has. The man is just a genius. I swear, there are only very few managers in world football that could take that group of players and get them that high up the Premier League table. He is so important to that Newcastle side, and I really hope that he stays. I'm sure he wants to stay. The players want him to stay. The fans want him to stay. Everyone wants this to work out. But if Rafa Benitez isn't given enough by the board or by Mike Ashley, enough reason to stay, and then he's got every right to walk. And honestly, I won't have any problems with him doing so if he doesn't get what he deserves. So honestly, I'll be absolutely heartbroken if he leaves. But aside from that, he's done bits for the club, and the fact that we finished in 10th is miraculous. In 13th place, I have West Bromwich Albion, who of course ended up finishing in 20th. So again, another pick that's well off the mark. I mean, West Bromwich Albion actually had a relatively strong season last season out under Tony Pulis. The fact that, obviously by their standards, finishing up as high as they did was probably quite decent for them. But the fact that they completely fell off, got rid of Tony Pulis in November. I know they didn't have the best of starts, but I think we were all quite shocked when they did get rid of him. And then they just went and appointed Alan Pardew. Not just Alan Pardew, but Alan Pardew and John Carver. You had to get the two of them. Like, surely it's bad enough just getting one of them. They won just one game in 4 months under Alan Pardew. They eventually got rid of him, brought in Darren Moore. He was absolutely tremendous for them when they eventually gave him the job, but it was unfortunately way too late. I mean, it would have been the most miraculous of comebacks ever, but it just wasn't to be. But I swear, I've got no sympathy for West Bromwich Albion going down. You appoint Alan Pardew. How does this guy keep getting a job? Maybe not just in football, maybe that's harsh, but how does he keep getting Premier League gigs? Honestly, surely this is the last straw. The team that I had in 12th place in my Premier League predictions, and the team that finished 12th in the Premier League, Bournemouth, finally, we got one right. I swear to God. Now, I put Bournemouth in a mid-table position this time out because in previous seasons, I would have thought for sure that, or I did think for sure that they were one of the teams that could have gone down. But no, they've pretty consistently been finishing in a mid-table spot for a while now. And I was done making that mistake. I was going to give them the respect they deserve. I was going to give Eddie Howe the respect that his team deserves as well. Put them in a mid-table spot, and it's bloody paid off for me, boys. 12th, got it bang on. I know they're a little inconsistent at times this year, but they've clearly just done enough to comfortably avoid the drop once again and finish in a reasonably, I think any Bournemouth fan will probably take 12th. I know that you've definitely done a little better in previous seasons, but surely, again, maybe a bit insulting, but any season you stay in the Premier League has got to be a plus. But no, honestly, they just keep finding their way into that mid-table spot. And the final team rounding off the bottom 10 is another team that I've kind of got wrong pretty badly, and that's Stoke City. Now, if you look at Stoke City in the Premier League over the last couple of seasons, you'll see that they've been finishing in mid-table quite consistently. And even last season, where they really didn't do too well for the first half of it, they were skyrocketing up from the bottom of the table up toward that mid-table spot toward the end of last season. And I thought that maybe they might have been able to have captured some of that form going into this one. But that just definitely did not end up being the case. They didn't really improve their squad all too much either. I mean, they brought in like Jesse Rodriguez, who I think, sure, that's a perfectly legitimate signing, I reckon, but he did not end up the player that they needed them to be. And yeah, it just didn't work out well for them. They were hounding Mark Hughes out like so hard. And then they ended up replacing him with the guy that Swansea sacked because they weren't doing a good enough job, Paul Lambert. So it just did not really end up, it was never going to end up all too well for Stoke, unfortunately. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see where certain players in that team go, like Ryan Shawcross, Jernan Shaqiri as well. Sure, I don't know how much or where he's going to go, but surely he'll fit in at a majority of Premier League sides. He'd be a great addition for a lot of teams. Now moving on into the top 10, places 7 through 10. And beginning in 10th place, I put Southampton. Again, pretty far off the mark. I don't know if I'm just looking at form and at previous season placings too much. I don't know what it is when it comes to me being so far off the mark with some of these teams. But again, Southampton in previous seasons, this is where we expected them to finish. They had a pretty poor season last time out. And I think my thinking going into it was, well, surely they can't have as bad a season. But nope, they had a pretty bad goddamn season. Maurizio Pellegrino, I think that's what his name, like, he definitely sounded like he was going to be an amazing manager. He managed Valencia for a little bit. And I mean, he had the credentials to sort of take over and seem like he could do a good job, but it definitely didn't end up going too well, him taking over after Claude Puel. So yeah, that did not work out for them. And honestly, just they didn't end up making too many big signings. And I will say this though, in defense of my pick, they had not sold Van Dijk at that point. But to be honest, the first half of the season that they played with Van Dijk, I mean, it's hardly like he was, doing amazing for them anyway. It's not like Southampton absolutely crashed as soon as they got rid of him. So honestly, I can't really hide behind the transfer of Van Dijk, even though that definitely did not help them. I don't know, Southampton just really seemed to have dropped off from a team that were pretty constantly finding their way up into the top 10 for the last couple of seasons. I think maybe they've sold one too many players to Liverpool. I don't know. Their team's been diluted a little bit too much. And obviously they had a lot of players that have been struggling quite a fair bit, like Shane Long, I reckon. Charlie Austin was their leading goal scorer this season. So I think that, I don't know, for a guy that I don't even think he featured that much this season. But yeah, obviously Southampton are going to seriously need to improve next season because, I mean, they've just been regressing in these last couple of seasons. In 9th position is Leicester City. And finally, a second team that I've got right. We're saving the prediction a little bit here. Again, I put Leicester in this spot because this is sort of where we're expecting them to finish from now on for maybe the foreseeable future, unless certain things change. I don't expect them to ever get back into the top 6 ever again. But I do expect them to be finishing somewhere in the top 10. Maybe they'll eventually drop off and start to fall. But they still kept Vardy. Vardy's still playing great, still scoring a lot of goals. You've still got Mahrez. They're bringing in some good names like Harry Maguire, who was great for them down back. And arguably almost their player of the season. I genuinely have rated his season very highly. And yeah, again, they just continue to put it together. And I know that Claude Puel was not really doing that good a job for Southampton, or at least Southampton fans didn't feel that way, but I feel like he's done a perfectly fine job at Leicester City, to be completely honest. In 8th place, I put West Ham. Now, their absolutely horror start to the season, which saw Slaven Bilic get the sack in November, meant that they didn't end up getting anywhere near that. They ended up finishing 13th. But I'm going to, look, honestly, there are some teams that I put in certain places, I look back and I go, Jesus, what was I thinking? But I'm going to see West Ham in 8th place. And you know, I'm actually, this is one of the rare picks I'm going to stand by, okay? With the signings that they made at the beginning of the season, guys like Arnautovic, Chicharito, Joe Hart, Zabaleta, I kind of thought maybe could have had a bit of a Kolarov situation where a fullback that's left Man City, a bit older, gone to another club and actually had quite a fair bit of success. I thought maybe there was a somewhat similar situation going on there. It looked like on the cards they were ready for another good, or a bounce back season after a bit of a turbulent, tumultuous season the first time out at the London Stadium. But no, I'm going to stand by my pick of putting West Ham in 8th, especially at the beginning of the season when we didn't know any better. I really do think that if they had a slightly better start to their season, if they were a little bit more consistent, that they probably could have ended up finishing in the top 10 somewhere. And I tell you what, if Marko Arnautovic hit his form just a little earlier, then absolutely, you know, because that guy is a goddamn gun. And the final spot before the top 6, in 7th, I have put Everton. And again, I feel like that is if anyone was going to do a Premier League prediction at the beginning of this season, surely Everton were going to get that 7th spot. Hell, there could have been some people that put them in the top 6 with how much money they spent, 200-something million spent on players. Ronald Koeman off the back of a pretty successful season. But the fact is, they lost Romelu Lukaku. They didn't replace him, and that was a big problem for them. They brought in a lot of really good, decent players, but no one star player to replace Lukaku. And maybe he hasn't, like Romelu Lukaku, been as incredible for Manchester United as he was for Everton last season, but still, it's a massive loss. It's kind of like with Sigurdsson leaving Swansea. It's almost exactly like that. To be fair, in the end, Everton did finish 8th, so it's not a total disaster season. It was a disastrous start to their season after they had just a horror beginning to the Premier League, and they ended up sacking Ronald Koeman, brought in Sam Allardyce, and I don't know if he's going to stay around. I mean, he's actually doing a brilliant job results-wise for Everton, but gosh, that football is dire. Again, I'm not too embarrassed putting Everton in 7th. I feel like that's the majority of people would have put Everton in 7th. Again, no problems with that. But the fact that they ended up salvaging their season and finishing 8th means it's a lot less embarrassing for me. But now we have made it to the top 6. Let's go place by place. Starting off in 6th position, I ended up going with Tottenham. But no, what I thought was that every single time Tottenham played a home game in the Premier League, obviously walking out to Wembley Stadium, it was going to be a big deal for them at the start, but it would eventually wear off. It'd just be like, oh, okay, we just have another game to play. Yeah, it's at Wembley Stadium. This is nothing new to us now. We've been playing here all season. But for every single team that came to play them throughout the entire season at Wembley Stadium, for their opponents, it was going to be a massive deal, getting to walk out and getting to play a game at Wembley Stadium. And I thought that meant their opposition was always, no matter what the circumstances, going to give it their all against them. And then, of course, the fact that they were going from White Hart Lane to Wembley itself, the actual stadium change. Obviously, the season prior with West Ham, they went from Upton Park to the London Stadium, and the stadium switch definitely did not help them, that's for sure. And I thought that maybe it would end up going the same way for Tottenham. But in the end, I think Tottenham just had maybe they regressed a little bit this season. I know they finished in 3rd, but I don't think points-wise they did as well as they did last time out. But, I mean, it all seems like everything's going fine still for that team. I'm excited to see their new stadium and how they go in it. But, yeah, again, another stadium switch. I don't know if I'll use that exact same logic in my next Premier League prediction video. But, yeah, I didn't exactly have them finishing in the top 4. But, yep, no, they finished in 3rd and I put them in 6th. The team I had finishing in 5th position was Arsenal. And again, unfortunately, a little off the mark, but not by too much, just the one again. And this was finally the season we said au revoir to Arsene Wenger, and it was a bit of a shocking season for him to finally go, but to be fair, it'd been coming for a while. I mean, no silverware, finishing in 6th, outside of the Champions League place, again, more Europa League for them this season. It's just, oh goodness, it was really poor. Just 63 points for the entire season. That's going to be their lowest tally in I don't know how long. I also said in the Premier League prediction video that I thought that them being in the Europa League would impede them a bit because I thought they were going to make quite a fair push in the Europa League. I thought they were good enough to go on and at least make the final, but no, they did end up making it to just the semis, getting knocked out by Atletico, so that ended up being the case. And Yeah, I know it was a bit of a ballsy pick and a bit of a risk putting Arsenal above Tottenham in this day and age of football, but unfortunately it didn't pay out. I put them in 5th. They've ended up in 6th. In 4th place, I put Liverpool, and finishing in 4th place in the Premier League this season was Liverpool. Finally, another team that I've got bang on. That's 3 out of, I think it's 17. Oh, God. I really shouldn't be too hard on myself for not getting one team absolutely correct with their place. I mean, come on. There's only a matter of points separating some of these teams. I'm being way too hard on myself here, but at least I've got Liverpool bang on. But yes, I did end up putting Liverpool in the top 4. I thought they were just going to be able to crack in there, and I said in the video that it might go all the way down to the final day, which, to be fair, it did. It wasn't between Liverpool and Arsenal. It was between Liverpool and Chelsea. And I also said that I was pretty happy with their signing of Andy Robertson. So, just saying. I definitely didn't have anything to say about Mo Salah though. So I had nothing. I had no idea. I just did not. He was amazing. He is by far one of the best signings in Premier League history. Like, surely he could be right up there. No, okay, maybe not the best, but he's top 5. I'm saying that for sure. But it was a pretty I don't even want to say successful season. I mean, Liverpool to finish in the top 4, I'm sure they're going to take that. They're now playing more Champions League, which I'm sure they're going to be very happy with. But if they don't win the title, I mean, that's, again, no silverware. Didn't really have that deep a run in the FA Cup. So it's kind of like, what's it really for? It's just sort of the Mo Salah show, honestly, at that point. It's not really anything that they've gotten out of it, but we'll have to wait and see. Liverpool finishing in 4th. I've got that bang on. Now moving on into 3rd. In that 3rd spot, I had Manchester United. Unfortunately, just again, one short. It's happening way too much now up toward the top 6. I did say in that Premier League prediction video that I might have put Manchester United up in a 2nd and that I kind of wanted to put them in 2nd, but I just didn't trust Manchester United to get into that sort of spot. I didn't rate them. I didn't think that they were going to go from 6th last season to winning the Premier League. I just didn't see it happening. I mean, to be fair, Chelsea went from 9th and won the Premier League, so maybe I could have given it to them. But in the end, no, that wasn't the case. They did finish 2nd. I just had it short by the 1. And I reckon Manchester United, there wasn't too much else they could have done. Finished with about 81 points, and that's a decent-ish total. Not normally going to win you the Premier League, but when the guys that do win the Premier League are the first team ever to get 100 points, there's not that much you can do about it. But no, instead of putting Manchester United in 2nd, I decided to go with Chelsea. Yeah, sure, because they always seem to back up a Premier League winning season with something absolutely fantastic. No, they never crumble a third of the way through the season and then just totally give up at the halfway point. No, that never happens. Honestly, I should have seen this coming, because Chelsea and their players have a goddamn track record of this, and I should have known better. The majority of Chelsea players, or fans should I say, now want Antonio Conte out because he's clearly not doing a good enough job now, or at least the results aren't good enough for him to stay in the job. And I kind of think even Conte at this point can't be fucked either. I think he's just like, nah, I'm done. I'm done with these players. If I leave, I leave. Whatever, just pay me out of my contract. I'm out of here. And again, I don't blame him, because these Chelsea players, I touched on it a moment ago, but they have a fucking track record of this. They did it with Mourinho. It seems like every single time they go or win a Premier League title, and maybe even if they don't win a Premier League title, maybe if they're playing, they're going hard at the beginning of the season, they're doing well, maybe they dip in form, they're struggling for a little bit, they've just got no, what's the word? I mean, they just give up. They're just weak. They just don't ever fight for the manager. I mean, just a little bit of adversity comes their way and they totally crumble. They totally give up. And then it's the manager's fault. He gets sacked and then they bring someone else in and then they come roaring back again. It's happened so many times in the past now. It's happened now with Conte and Mourinho, and even before this, back when maybe they weren't exactly challenging for titles. It still happens even back then. I'm kind of sick and over these fucking Chelsea players. At some point, the blame's got to go onto them. Surely at some point. But Chelsea, but Conte is probably going to end up leaving Chelsea. I don't know who they're going to get in. If he does stay, then I feel like that'd be quite surprising. But I feel like you're just probably asking for more of the same, especially with the players that you've got and the mentality in that bloody changing room as well. I just don't know. I think it's probably best for everyone that they move on Conte. Conte. He's probably going to get a decent payout from his contract as well. So I feel like Chelsea just need a fresh start and maybe one or two more signings in some key areas, like maybe it's striker, especially with Morata apparently now going back to Juventus. And finally, the team I predicted to win the Premier League, the team that I successfully predicted to win the Premier League. I didn't expect them to just completely overwhelm the rest of the competition, but Manchester City finishing in first. I predicted them to finish in first. So what is that? Four or five? No, I think it's just 4. No, it's 4 out of 20. Oh my god. Hey, 420. Yeah, no, fucking sick. It definitely hasn't been my strongest ever prediction throughout the entire table for sure, but the fact that I was able to correctly predict Man City, that makes me happy, because if I'd predicted any other club to finish in first place, especially after the season that Man City ended up having, just completely wiping the floor with the rest of the competition, that at least makes me happy. So yeah, at least I got that right, and I'm sort of, I feel a lot better now. I was pretty confident Man City were going to win the title this season with the amount that they had invested. Just in defence alone, nearly something like £200 million. It was crazy. Brought in some decent signings as well, some good names. And the fact that it was Pep Guardiola's second season in charge, so he'd got a bit of time to wrap his head around it all. And yeah, it just all seemed like it was going to click and fall into place this time around. And it bloody well did. The Centurions, are they the best Premier League team of all time? In my opinion, I think they bloody well are. The most amount of wins, biggest winning margin, first team to crack 100 points. So much goes their way. Just because they lost 2 games, apparently they're not better than the Invincibles. I don't buy that. I reckon they are the best team ever in the Premier League. Think of it this way. It's kind of like, imagine if Barcelona didn't lose to Levante and they didn't throw away their undefeated season. If they did go on and have an invincible season in La Liga, I still don't think they would have been the best team ever in La Liga. No, I don't think they even would have been the best Barcelona side of all time. It still would have been the 2009 or 2011-2012 Barca team. There's no way. I just kind of feel like it's a bit of a novelty, the whole not losing for an entire season. It's damn well impressive, and the fact that it's almost never going to be done again, or at least not for a very long time, it's super hard to do. I appreciate that, but to me, it's 32 wins versus 26 wins, and 100 points versus 90 points. I feel like there's a clear winner. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked a little bit. Manchester City are the Premier League champions. I predicted them to go on and win it all, so thankfully I got that right. But yeah, not my best prediction ever. I don't know if I beat last season's either, which was all I was trying to do, unfortunately. But oh well, hopefully we'll get a lot better next time out. But thank you so much for watching, guys. My name is the MasterBucks. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and until the next video, have a good one. Bye bye.